Story 1. Selling a perpetual license to software, then tricking the software users to abandon their perpetual usage rights to sign up for a software as a subscription offering of the same software they own a perpetual license for. Story 2. Walking away from liabilities. I do not mean people going bankrupt from medical emergencies. I mean huge corporations creating shell companies for an oil drilling site, transferring all the profits into another entity, often executive salaries and bonuses, then declaring bankruptcy when the well is running dry and they are supposed to clean up their mess. As a result, taxpayers clean up the abandoned oil wells, coal pits, slag heaps, and toxic waste dumps. They run up debt to acquire assets, then split into separate groups, placing all the assets like real estate into a holding group, and then declare bankruptcy on the operations side. Goodbye, Sears. Goodbye, Toys R Us. Story 3. Vulture capitalists. Gain control of the corporation by bribing enough of the board of directors to sell to you. Then you loot the place. Sell off assets, loot pension funds, and leave the corporation crippled. Soon it has to declare bankruptcy. The suppliers and employees are left holding an empty bag, and then the place goes under. Move on to the next victim. Story 4. The mention of Adobe reminded me of this. It may not be exactly unethical, but presenting an option, such as exporting to another format, and then revealing at the very last step before completion that the functionality must be purchased is misleading. Story 5. In the United States, people spend excessive amounts of money to gain control of a congressional seat, and then engage in insider trading based on their knowledge of how legislation will affect future stock prices. All that is needed is a minimal attempt at plausible deniability because no one wants to risk disrupting their own advantageous position to punish yours. Story 6. Towing companies enter into agreements with landlords to tow cars out of parking lots for bogus reasons, then hold the car hostage until they have collected hundreds of dollars from the owner. If the towing was a mistake, for example, they towed your car from your parking spot, it is still your problem. Story 7. Using technology to insert yourself into a cycle and then charging people to use your service, for example, Airbnb and Uber. Story 8. Multi-level marketing companies are super predatory and unethical. Most people lose money with them. Those who do make money do so by creating a downline of people who lose money, allowing them to profit. It is sad that this practice is still legal. I am very disappointed when one of my friends starts posting about joining one on social media. Story 9. Naked short selling occurs when people trade stock options on stock they do not own. This is a significant issue. Medical equipment rentals, such as mobility scooters, are often billed to Medicare and Medicaid at rates many times higher than the actual cost of the unit. Payday loans from Native American reservations are often operated by non-tribal entities using sovereign reservation land as the business address. This allows them to charge extremely high interest rates. One such loan I saw years ago charged over 600% interest. Even organized crime groups were frustrated that they could not charge such rates legally. Story 10. Basically, every subscription service requires you to provide a credit card number for a free trial because they know a significant percentage of people are disorganized and will lose track of it, fail to cancel, and end up paying for many months or years of a service they are likely not even using without realizing it. Story 11. Insurance. We will bet you that something will happen to you or your property, as appropriate to the policy. Every month nothing happens to your property, you pay us. Very likely, you will pay us well over the cost of replacing the item you are insuring, unless it is your life. Even then, you may pay more than the amount that will be paid out if something does happen to you. If at any point you do not pay us, we will immediately terminate the agreement and not refund any payments made. If something does happen to you or your property, we will exhaust every possible avenue to avoid paying you unless forced to. Even then, we will attempt to minimize the payment so you cannot fully replace the item insured. Regarding vehicles, if you are found not to have an active policy with us, you will be fined, your vehicle will be impounded with additional substantial fees, and you will be banned from its use until you have entered into a policy with us. Story 12. Free video games, often not even free, are filled with microtransactions, gotchas, loot boxes, slot games, and more, all heavily marketed to children. This is gambling, as it relies on betting on a very small chance of obtaining a significant dopamine rush. These games and companies hide behind the loophole that gambling is defined as using real money to play a chance game that pays out real money or real prizes. Their defense is that players use fake in-game currency to win fake in-game items, while ignoring that this fake currency is purchased with real money. Story 13. Prosperity Gospel teaches that if you give money to God, God will return the favor 100-fold. There is even a toll-free number for donations by credit card. Story 14. It is apparently legal to purchase a company, take out loans in its name, purposely mismanage it, and then declare bankruptcy because, oh my God, who could have known, and then close all the locations. Story 15. Student loans. Amidst a climate where 18-year-olds are newly made adults and are not trusted to drink until they are 21, we impose the pressure of finishing college with no guarantee they will have a job with their degree. We do not give them time to understand the economy, but we encourage signing off on a debt that cannot be resolved through bankruptcy. It is the only exception. It is think of the children until for-profit education is involved. Story 16. Multi-level marketing. These companies prey on vulnerable people with the idea of getting rich quickly by joining a downline. What they do not tell you until you are in is that you have to contact everyone you know repeatedly in order to make sales. Also, most people in these companies either barely make any money or they actually lose money. Story 17. Subscription payment for fixed, built-in features, for example, paying monthly for heated seats in BMW vehicles. Audi offers these features as well. Story 18. Have you ever had someone try to sell you a Kirby vacuum cleaner? The sales pitch happens in your house, with the demonstrator using the vacuum on your carpet. To get in the door, a fast-talking salesperson gets you to hurriedly agree to a demonstration. Then, the demonstrator arrives and sets up to vacuum a small patch of your carpet for about an hour. Afterward, the fast talker returns and tries to pressure you into buying a very expensive vacuum cleaner. These sales teams are predatory. They literally judge houses while passing by, and if they see a potential customer, they send in a fast talker and a demonstrator. I worked this job for one night and was thoroughly disgusted by the practice. The people involved are unprofessional. Do not buy a Kirby. The business model is unethical. Story 19. Tow truck services prey on people when they are vulnerable and then extort them with excessive fees to retrieve their car from the impound yard. Story 20. Ticket sales and resales. Ticket price, demand price, venue fee, seller fee, booking fee, delivery fee. Then 95% of the tickets get scalped and immediately resold on the reseller website, which is operated by the same company, for additional fees. Story 21. Real estate purchases after a disaster. Recent widows, those named in obituaries, and people in natural disaster zones are targeted by fake repairmen, real estate buyers, and thieves. This trend is deeply concerning. Story 22. Impoundment lots. No other business is allowed to keep your property until you have paid. Every other business must send a bill, provide reminders, and use legal methods to obtain payment. Impoundment lots can take your car and hold it until you have paid. If you cannot pay, they charge additional daily fees for the time your car remains on the lot, including days when you had no opportunity to retrieve the car. Story 23. Being able to sign up for something online but not cancel without a phone call or other cumbersome process. Game advertisements that are nothing like the actual game. Story 24. A car dealer taking advantage of a buyer and selling them a car at a high interest rate for more than 6 years. Story 25. I'm going to chime in with the buy here, pay here car lots. Although anyone with common sense would avoid them, the lot is full of salvage title, 10-year-old vehicles that people purchase based on a weekly payment. Since financial literacy is not emphasized in the United States, individuals who only consider what they can afford per week keep these businesses operating. Interest rates can range from 20% to 100%. For example, paying $200 per week might seem reasonable for a 10-year-old Chevrolet Equinox. That amounts to $800 per month with an 84-month term at 35% interest. Story 26. Gacha games are based on predatory microtransactions and are banned or regulated in many parts of the world, but not in the United States. It has become so problematic that some individuals spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on these games, often played on mobile devices. Story 27. Health and wellness is filled with many harmful and dangerous products, along with a lot of misleading information from health influencers. The worst offenders are those promoting healthy at any size for morbidly obese individuals. Story 28. Aren't all business models essentially predatory in some way, simply because they are business models? Story 29. Building a reputation for quality, then pivoting to maximum profit margin, fragility, and obsolescence, sometimes after a change in ownership or management, for example, Toyota. Alternating products focused on quality, then profit margin, to maintain plausible deniability and customer loyalty, for example, Apple. Story 30. Pyramid schemes or multi-level marketing, whatever they are called now, most of them end up preying on friends and family. Independent travel agents seem to be the latest example, in the United Kingdom anyway. Story 31. Buying a one-time service and discovering a hidden recurring charge for features you did not want happen to me this week. Story 32. Multi-level marketing, religion, the American healthcare system, real page, probably not legal, but they are in business making billions from renters. Story 33. I could spend the rest of my life providing examples. How about this? A new Supreme Court decision creates potential traps for the unwary and gives the Internal Revenue Service nationwide power to leave a taxpayer without a remedy to contest certain collection actions while a collection due process action is pending. This means the Supreme Court allows the Internal Revenue Service seizure of unrelated refunds to cut off a taxpayer's right to tax court. The Internal Revenue Service has rights and powers not available to the ordinary citizen. That seems somewhat unethical to me. Ethical, adjective, being in accordance with the accepted principles of right and wrong that govern the conduct of a profession. Synonym, moral. Story 34. Many countries are abandoning their constitutional laws to pave the way for digital payments and card transactions. This shift moves society closer to a totalitarian state. Story 35. Subscriptions to services that never remind you when the subscription will renew and then fight to keep your money are frustrating. It is hard to imagine how many dollars in renewals had been taken from people who never used the product beyond that point. Story 36. The entire concept of identity fraud. Someone scams a bank out of money by claiming to be you, and it becomes your problem to resolve. You had no part in this. You neither lost nor gained money. The bank allowed it because it makes them more money to not check their customers closely. Any potential impediment, like thorough identification checks, to selling financial services lowers sales. It is your responsibility to clear it up. At the end of the day, a financial institution effectively declares that you owe them money, and you are considered guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Story 37. Leveraged buyout. Only available to the wealthiest individuals, used to avoid paying for liabilities and removing all risk from themselves. Predatory, unethical, and somehow perfectly legal. Story 38. Free 30-day trial. When you try to cancel, it is extremely difficult. You have to call a paid number at a specific time and wait on hold for a long time. Story 39. I do not know if this is common, but a while ago there was a news story about model scouts trying to recruit people outside of a local eating disorder clinic. Story 40. Credit cards have interest rates of 20 to 30%. Only those who cannot afford the interest end up paying these fees. Story 41. Timeshares. Used car salesmen and car dealerships. Check cashing and cash advances. Pawn shops. Tow companies that tow parked cars. Gym memberships that make it impossible to cancel. Insurance policies. Homeowner, health, and automobile. Sorry, claim denied because we want to keep all the money you have paid us over the years. Story 42. Cash for gold places. Their entire business model is based on either elderly people not knowing what their items are worth or stolen items making it through the cracks and being melted after the cooling period required in most states. They pay pennies on the dollar for gold compared to the melt value. Most elderly customers assume that any quote they receive will be at least somewhat close to market value and fairly reasonable, reflecting the true worth of their jewelry. I learned more than I cared to about these places from someone who owned a couple of them. He was enthusiastic about how great the business was and how high the profit margins were. He did not directly say they targeted the elderly, but it was clear from how he described the margins. He justified it to himself by saying it was not his fault that customers expected him to be a legitimate appraiser who would simply buy their items. He kept emphasizing how little he paid as a business compared to the actual value of the gold. It was disturbing. What is worse is that usually elderly people, needing to sell cherished items to live off, are under pressure and need the money quickly. By that time, they are unlikely to take much time figuring out values or shopping around. Story 43. Two types of home options immediately came to mind. Timeshares. The problems associated with most owners being able to use their property when they want to, plus the inability to sell. Even their children can be burdened when a person dies. It is a complicated issue. Mobile home sales. Mobile homes used to be an affordable and viable option for many. Now, the poor are likely stuck with a devaluing asset, even with improvements, as the home is not very mobile. Additionally, many mobile home lots have increased space rents, pushing many to sell at a loss or, worse, face homelessness. Sad. Story 44. Insurance is essentially gambling on whether you will pay the insurance company more than they pay you during your policy period. Insurance companies usually win that bet, and even when they lose, they often try to refuse payment. It is the worst casino ever. Story 45. Asking oddly specific questions with contrary answers on internet forums to train artificial intelligence, create list bait, or gain karma. Story 46. Casinos offering payday advance loans. Check out How America Killed My Mother, a documentary by Eddie Larson about legal and predatory businesses. Story 47. Paying someone to make something, then having to pay to own the thing you just paid them to make, for example, photography. Story 48. Video game currencies obscure the real money value of purchases and spending, making them resemble gambling as much as possible without violating anti-gambling laws. Fortunately, some regulations are finally being implemented to stop the worst practices, but it remains a harmful and predatory practice. Story 49. Feminism. I watched a film by Cassie J that shows how wealthy it is. This is why they attack men's rights activists and label them as hate groups. They do not want to share the available resources. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.